Gimel Elul Taf Shin Ayin Zayin Ze Hayom Asa Adonai Nagila v'nismecha bo. Sefer Yetzira is the book of creation, and perhaps the most important concept in Sefer Yetzira is the parallel between human creation to divine creation. That the message of the book is we're learning a lot about the creative powers of God, but at the same time we're learning about the creative powers of humanity. And I think the heart of the Kabbalah is that statement that the Torah begins with, that Rav Kook in his recently published book, Lenevuchei Ador, for the perplexed of the generations, he begins his book by saying, Shahadam nivra b'tselem Elohim, ze hayesod shel kol haTorah. That humanity is created in the image of God. This is the essence of the entire Torah. And in many ways, from Sefer Yetzira on, the statement is developed within the realm of all the Sifrei Kabbalah to give real meaning and content to that parallel between humanity and God. And of course, this becomes a very major challenge and also danger, because by linking humanity to God, we want to raise humanity up to become more sublime, and not the opposite, to bring God down. We don't want anthropomorphism, which is giving human attributes to God. We want to try to find how to take divine attributes and apply them to humanity. In fact, there's a marvelous book called Tomer Devorah of the Ramak, Rav Moshe Cordovero, that he takes this idea really all the way through. He says there are 13 attributes of mercy of God. So let's think about what are each of them, in order that each of us should learn to live our lives based on these 13 attributes of mercy. There are 10 sefirot of God. So and if we are in the image of God, we also have 10 sefirot. What are they and how can we learn from them? But this connection, this idea really goes back to Sefer Yetzira. And another important introduction to the Mishnah that we'll be doing today is that in the Middle Ages, many Jewish philosophers, often impacted on by Greek philosophy, would very sharply divided between body and soul. And as a result, the idea of Tselem Elohim, image of God, became something connected to something very intellectual or spiritual. Whereas within the world of Chazal, the Talmud, as pointed out in a doctorate by Yair Lorberboim, Tselem Elohim really is the totality, our body and spirit and soul. They all form one organic totality, and in all of them we are connected to the image of God. Or as often quoted in the pasuk in Iyov, "Ubibasara echaza Eloah." In my flesh I will see God, seeing that in the body itself we see the divine. So this brings us to the third Mishnah of Sefer Yetzira, which it's one of the most significant Mishnayot. She gets to the heart of the human-God connection in terms of our creative powers. So the third Mishnah begins, Eser Sfirot Blima. There are 10 Sfirot of Blima, and as we mentioned in the last shiur, Blima can mean Blima, without substance, untangible, or Blima could be Blima livlom, to hold back. This we explained last time. The Sefer Yetzira continues by saying, B'misbar Eser Etzba'ot, with the number of 10 fingers. And here we have the first connection between God and humanity. There are 10 sefirot of God, and there are 10 fingers that we each have. Now this also gives us insight in some of the meaning of the word sfirot. We said that there are multiple meanings to the word sfirot. One of them is connected to mispar, in Hebrew, number. So the Esses Sfirot are the 10 numbers. Now someone could feel a little bit disappointed, but realize that the concept of 10 Sfirot being numbers, why this is such an important concept in talking about the connection between God and the world. In the ultimate divinity, all is one. There is no multiplicity. The story of creation is going from all is one, or as Sefer Yetzira says later, Lifnei achad ma tasofer, before one, what do you count? All is one, all is before there is even one, and creation is really bringing multiplicity into the world. So one aspect of Sfirot is adding that multiplicity into the world. So Mispar Eser et Tzba'ot ve'Eser Sfirot clues us in on one meaning of Sfirot, and a connection between our hands and fingers and the Sfirot. Now this can be understood in a number of ways and a number of levels. We know that Tanakh connects the hands to God's creation in the opposite direction. There are a number of psukim that we talk about the God's creation, that they use fingers and hands to talk about God's handiwork. For example, in Tehillim. Okay. So one understanding of what does it mean when we say that our 10 fingers parallel those of God, one way to understand it would be to say that it's simply human endeavor and creativity. We see that as really creating worlds. For example, in the Mechilta de Rashbi, on the pasuk that we all know, Sheshet Yamim Tavod Vasita Kol Malachtecha, Ki Sheshet Yamim Asa Hashem et Hashemayim et Haaretz, V'Yom Hashi Shavat. The Mechilta says, just like when we do Shabbat, we parallel God. The same way, when 6 days of the week, we build, we do, we are also emulating God in the fact that we are creating and we are doing. So we're empowering human endeavor by seeing human endeavor as being some sort of a parallel to that creative endeavor of God. There's the Ramban. There's a mitzvah that every Kohen, every day in the Beit HaMikdash would wash his, do what's called Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. He would sanctify with water his hands and his feet. Fingers as being conduits, whether it's Birchat Kohanim, that they use the name of God and they're channeling Shekhinah with their fingers, whether in general putting your hands on someone or an animal when you do smicha. But other aspects, certainly in Eastern medicine and spirituality, we see fingers also as conduits of energy. That not only metaphorically, but feeling that there are energies inside of us that have impact and power, and within healing, within Reiki, fingers are seen to be channels of these energies if used right. In fact, so Reiki is Japanese. Rai is universal. Ki would be life, which is really almost like, so it's been pointed out, almost like a translation of Elhai, one of the names of God that gives forth the powers of life. Okay, now the second statement in this Mishnah is after telling us that our 10 fingers parallel the 10 Sfirot of God, we say Chamesh keneged Chamesh, 5 paralleling 5. And we'll see this in the later, the importance of this connection of the 5 paralleling the 5, that the structure of the world is 5-dimensional according to Sefer Yetzira, and the 10 Sfirot are indeed broken up into 5 groups of 2. But this contrast that my left and my right, it's 5 keneged 5, paralleling 5, Rav Aryeh Kaplan, in his really marvelous commentary to Sefer Yetzira, which I certainly recommend to anyone who want to delve deeper into Sefer Yetzira, points out that a lot of creativity comes when we have opposites that meet. The ultimate example of creativity is masculine and feminine, male and female, that in many ways opposites. Certainly in Jewish mysticism, it's paralleling the left and the right by by them being opposite to one another, allow them to create in that place between them. So, almost like a magnetic field, the two opposites create a place of creativity, and perhaps this is connected to that statement of Rabbi Akiva, Ish v'isha zechu shchina b'neihem. A man and woman, if they're privileged, the shchina is between them. It's that place between them that their creativity takes place. So we have another fundamental idea that also is very major in Sefer Yetzira, the contrast, that the fact that two opposites is what leads to a lot of creativity, and the goal to incorporate the opposite aspects of reality. Something we'll mention many times, like the word emet in Hebrew begins with aleph, the first letter of the alphabet, ends with taf, the last letter of the alphabet. Truth is what links and combines things that are very much the opposite. Okay, so we studied the fingers, we've studied the tension, dialectic between the two hands, the 10 fingers, the 10 sfirot. Sefer Yetzira continues, Ubrit yachid mechuvan be'emsa. But there's the Brit, and the Brit is be'emsa. The Brit is that middle line between the two opposites, left and right. We have the Brit in that place of the center. And in general, there's always a question, where is the realm of the holy? Some might say in the heavens, which is above. Sefer Yetzira, the answer will always be in the center. We know even in the human body, sometimes people talk about the head. The head is the highest part. The Zohar talks often about moichin, the brain, the wisdom, the understanding, and focus very much on the moach, the head. Sefer Yetzira focuses on the middle point, the heart. That's why Sefer Yetzira began by saying, בשלשים ושתים נתיבות פליאות חכמה, with 32 pathways of wisdom, when 32 is the gematria of lev, of heart in Hebrew. We have so here too, the place of the holiness is that center point, because the center is what really connects with everything and ultimately could incorporate everything. In fact, in the commentary of the Ravid to Sefer Yetzira, on this phrase, Brit Yachid Mechuvan Be'emsa, the Ravid writes, what is Mechuvan Be'emsa? That means the heart. Emsa is the heart. So we have above and below, left and right, and the Brit is that center point. Okay, now we'll finish the discussion on the human body, or focal points in the human body, and we'll continue by saying, Bimilat halashon uvimilat hamor. We all heard about Brit Milah. In Sefer Yetzira, there's a double Brit. There's a Brit we're familiar with the Brit Milah of what's called Milat HaMa'or. Or is probably a expression for the male reproductive organ, where the Brit Milah is, or meaning flesh. But the first Brit is Brit Lashon, the Brit on Lashon, which is speech, and this really opens to a lot of important points. More than anything else, Sefer Yetzira sees divine creativity as connected to speech. And this shouldn't be a surprise, because the story of creation in the Torah focuses on the 10 mamarot, the 10 speakings of God. Vayomer Elohim, Yehi Or, and God said, let there be light. So the Bible talks about divine speech. Divine speech is creative speech. And Sefer Yetzira sees that aspect of humanity that makes us like God is that we have the power of speech. Speech is not only human, but it's really divine. It's what really separates us from the animal kingdom. And that speech is, Sefer Yetzira believes, has creative ability. In fact, I think I may have mentioned last time, in what the magicians say, abracadabra is in fact Aramaic abarakadabra. I will create as I speak, which is based on the approach of Sefer Yetzira, seeing there's creative ability to speech itself. Okay, so to say that there's a Brit relating to speech is saying that we have a partnership with God relating to creative abilities. God creates with speech, we create with speech. And I think this is so important because often in Judaism, when people talk about speech, the focus is don't do something negative. Don't talk lashon hara. But as true as that is, that's really only the beginning. To realize speech isn't our enemy. Speech is our friend. Speech is our blessing, our gift from God. It's the God inside of us. It's not enough for people to avoid negative speech, but to ask ourselves how my speech could bring more light into the world. The good that I could do with my speak. Not avoiding lashon hara, but increasing lashon tov. But another point here is, I think this gives us tremendous insight in what Brit Milah is all about. And in fact, tonight there's a friend of mine has a new son. Tomorrow is the Brit, and tonight there's Brit Yitzchak, that you sit together and you study the topic of Brit Milah. And one thing that I'd like to discuss here is this Mishnah, because in the word Brit, there's something for Brit Milah, there's something very surprising, because usually we think of our relationship to God as servants, as being subjugated to God. When you talk about a Brit, a covenant, a treaty, that's something which is done not between a master and his slave, but really between equals. Two countries have a Brit between them. A man and a woman enter the Brit Hanasu'in. To say that we have Brit Milah, it's surprising if we see Brit Milah as a becoming entering bondage to God. But I think the Mishnah here gives us the solution. What the Brit Milah is about, it's not about subjugation. It's about a covenant of partnership with God. God creates with speech, we create with speech. God created humanity, we, Brit Milah, with the organ of reproduction, we have the ability to bring new life into the world. So the idea of Brit is really the idea of partnership with God. And this brings us to a insight of Jonathan Sachs that once said that of the three monotheistic Abrahamic religions, if you would ask what is the essence of humanity, Islam means submission. The essence of humanity is submission. So Muslims say, what is humanity? Submission to God. You would go to a Christian and say, what is the essence of the human state? The answer would be original sin. The reason why it's so essential for Christians to accept Jesus is because original sin has contaminated us, and only through accepting Jesus can we achieve salvation. But in Judaism, the essential statement of humanity would be, he quotes it as partnership with God, where I would go take that one point further and say partnership with God, which of course is based on this idea of Hadam Nivra B'Tselem Elohim, the humanity created in the image of God. So there's a Gemara in there's a Gemara that says that we're not asked to be born, we're not asked to die. That very much, I think it is an important concept. I think we have a world that so much believes on everything about choice, but to feel that there's some things, some destinies that somehow are more powerful than some level of personal choice.
Also, it's the power to read a Lashon, like conscious to be allowed. It's not something that happened and I was confident. The Lashon, it's something that's constant.
Marvelous. So what Benzi is saying is just like Brit Lashon, it's not the end, but a beginning. So too Brit Milah is not the end. Brit Milah is the beginning. Brit Milah, entering the Brit, the challenge of life is how you live your life, how you live the Brit, and not just that initial initiation, which indeed is something that is not by, which is not done by personal choice. I'll mention also. Let me just again, I apologize. I have to leave a little bit early. Another aspect of this Mishnah. Earlier, I mentioned Reiki in terms of the fingers, and we know that also in Eastern spirituality and medicine, there's a concept of the 7 chakrot. Chakrot are circles of energy, which are seen as the center. In addition to the powers of the finger, they are the circles of energy, which are seen as a direct line in the middle of the human body. It includes the heart, the ability of speech, the keter, the crown, the head, the male organ, female organ, and here too in Sefer Yetzira we are giving a tremendous emphasis. Again, we have the extremities that they too have power like the Sefirot, that are like an expansion of God, and then we have our center line, which are our basic powers and energies are expressed in this center line in the human body. Now, one last point I'll mention is we've all heard about the tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam. Now, Rashi's tefillin there are 4 parshiot in tefillin, which are written according to the order of the 4 parshiot in the Torah. 2 in Sefer Shemot, and then 2 in Sefer Dvarim, first Shema, and afterwards Vahaya im Shemoah. Now, Rashi has the order of the Torah in his tefillin, and it's also seemingly the logical order, because certainly the parsha of Shema, which deals with accepting the Malchut Shemayim, should perceive accepting the details of the mitzvot. Nevertheless, we see that in Tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam, he switches the order. Vahaya im Shemoah precedes Parshat Shema. And this is certainly something very puzzling. Once a solution that I once thought of is also connected to this passage. If you look in Rashi, the parshiot begin here at one side of the head and finish at the other side of the head. But if we see the essence as the center, that center line inside of each of us, that place bein einechem, between the eyes, is a center line. The essential point of holiness would be that center. So the way I see, Rabbeinu Tam also is going in order. But what he's doing he starts on one side with the book of Shemot, first chapter 12, then chapter 13. Shemot, the parsha of the Shemot complete themselves in the middle of the tefillin. And then Dvarim, it's not that Vayam Shema is before Shema. It's just he starts simultaneously from both sides. Shemot starts here, first you have the first parsha, and then the second parsha, finishing in the center. And then Sefer Dvarim starts with Shema on the opposite extreme, and then continues with Vayim Shemoah, so that Shemot and Dvarim link together. The linking point is that center point. In fact, the one way to know that you have tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam is that there is a here that comes out of tefillin after Parshat Vayim Shemoah. So in tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam, that comes out in the exact center. So I think Rabbeinu Tam is about all is one. Rashi, the tefillin, is a miniature Sefer Torah, so there are 4 parshiot written in the order of the Torah. Rabbeinu Tam believes all is it's all is one. It's getting to that oneness. It's getting to that center point inside of us, and those are his tefillin. Okay, so we learned what in my opinion is one of the most significant mishnayot in Sefer Yetzira. Bezrat Hashem, next week we'll continue with Mishnah Dalid and Hey. Sof davar hakol nishma et Elohim yira ve'et mitzvotav shmor ki ze kol ha'adam.